All right, I show us at the top of the hour, and we do have a number of attendees. Again, thank you all for joining us. And I am looking over at Tom Remington to see, Tom, if you think we are ready to begin. Oh, but we do need to unmute you, Tom. There we go.
I think so. I assume I can't see how many people have actually joined. Well, I see 86.
Yep, we have a good number.
Okay, let's get started.
All right, very good. Well, again, welcome everyone. This is the Sagebrush Conservation Challenges series of online workshops, and this is the kickoff workshop. The morning session, we'll be saying a little bit more about that, but again, thank you so much for joining us. And before we go any further, I would like to turn it over. Actually, let me mention one thing, and we'll say it again, but if you are having any technical difficulties, please jot this number down at the bottom of your screen, 210-269-5524. That number belongs to Liz Mack, and she will assist you if you are having any difficulties with Zoom, either hearing it or seeing it anytime during the meeting. So wanted to mention that to you. But what I'd like to do now is introduce Tony Wasley, who is probably very familiar to many, if not most of you. He's the director of the Nevada Division of Wildlife Resources, and he is the chair of the Executive Oversight Committee for Sagebrush through the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. So Tom, it's over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here. As Susan indicated, I'm Tony Wasley, the director for the Nevada Department of Wildlife and current chairman of WAFWA Sagebrush Executive Oversight Committee. So welcome to the Sagebrush Conservation Strategy Stakeholder Workshop. Truly appreciate your participation and are grateful that despite the challenges surrounding coronavirus and COVID-19, we can still have this very important conversation regarding conservation of the sagebrush biome. All 13 states with sagebrush habitat share some of the same conservation challenges, but Nevada, from my front row seat, is ground zero for many sagebrush challenges. Fire, invasive species, free roaming equids, mining, and energy production all present sagebrush conservation challenges in some form or another, particularly here in Nevada. Even before coronavirus, we knew that despite the dedication and passion of many of you, we had to do better. Nevada alone has lost approximately 1/4 of its sagebrush habitat just in the last 10 years. The well-being of the sage grouse and the 370 or so other species that depend on this biome are dependent on those of us with a stake in the sagebrush biome to help stop and ultimately reverse this trend. Current conditions require us to be more creative and innovate new strategies and ideas, bring new enthusiasm and renewed energy to the table, identify new and additional funding sources, and most importantly, figure out how to do all of this more collaboratively across scales and across our too often separate and independent organizations. Of course, all this is easier said than it is done. Summoning the support, collaboration, and resources necessary to successfully achieve effective long-term conservation in the sagebrush biome was challenging enough in times before a global pandemic, stretched budgets, and shifted priorities. Now, more than ever, it's incumbent upon us to collaborate and innovatively reshape the sagebrush conservation narrative to one that has a better ending than the ending in the narrative under which we were previously working. Thanks again for everyone's participation, and welcome to some very informative, energetic, and hopefully inspiring discussions about sagebrush and the associated threats. I challenge all of us to think about how we can use it to flip the script. Thank you for your interest and passion in sagebrush conservation, and thanks for joining us here. With that, I'll turn it back over to Susan, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a welcome today.
Great, thank you very much, Tony. Appreciate your comments. All right, let's do just a few little introductions here by way of opening before we get into more of the content. So again, I briefly introduced myself. My name is Susie Haiman. I am a facilitator for today's session. I work for a company called Enviro Issues. I've worked with a number of you over the years on sagebrush and sagebrush conservation and enviro issues, is super pleased to be helping out with this effort. You'll notice some other folks that are on the enviro issues team with me. Liz Mack is our host and our technical expert here today as far as the Zoom controls go, and we'll say a little bit more about that. Candace Plendel is also with the enviro issues team, and she is on to capture any notes and document and then just help support the effort. A couple other names that you'll see from enviro issues are Jackie Dagger and Janelle Hull. You have probably been getting emails from them, especially the presenters. So you will hear more from them and see more from them during our breakout sessions next week. So just a couple of things I want to make you aware of for those of you for whom Zoom might be a little unfamiliar, although that's probably hard to imagine these days. We've probably all been on this. We are recording the meeting, and all of the presentations will be posted on our online site, and we'll be talking about that in just a bit. We are going to keep people muted during the meetings just to try to manage the background noise. Attendees, if we get to a point where we have time for some questions and you raise your hand to ask a question, then we'll be happy to unmute you at that time. And same goes for all of our presenters. We'll be keeping everyone muted. If you happen to unmute, you might see us mute you again. And for those of you who are attendees, the screen that you're looking at right now should be the screen that you have in front of you. Presenters, your screen looks a little bit different. But for those who are attending, you can see at the bottom is the raise hand function. So if you do want to ask a question when we call for that, you're welcome to raise your hand there. And then if you have any written questions that you'd like to submit, you're certainly welcome to do that at any time. We'll probably have limited time for Q&A during today's presentations, but we'll do our best to make some opportunities. If we get asked questions that we're not able to get to, we'll work with the presenters and see if we can get responses to those questions and then post them online with our other materials. And that is what the question box looks like. If you click on this bottom Q&A, you can type your question and then send that. You can send it anonymously, but it would help us if we know who it is, just in case we need to do an individual follow-up with you. All right, and then just for today, a couple other notes. Please text or call Liz if you have any technical difficulties, and I have her number up here. Again, the presentations from today will be posted on our website. Here it is, Sagebrush Conservation Workshop.participant.online. You might want to jot that down. That website also contains the breakout group lists, so who is participating in each of those breakout groups, the discussion questions and other materials. Those will be posted by May 11th for your viewing. All right, real quickly, I believe you all have a copy of the agenda. It was sent out, San Stiver distributed that for us, and thank you, San, for all of those communications you had with the participants and attendees. So just real quickly, we have this opening session we're about to finish up. And then we have, let's see, we have 5 presentations today. Sagebrush biome, human dependencies on sagebrush, wildlife dependencies, fire and invasive species. The presenters are noted here. All of the folks who are presenting either participated in the preparation of the sagebrush conservation strategy that I believe Tom Remington is going to speak to in just a moment. They either contributed to that and or they are certainly subject matter experts. So we really appreciate them being with us today. Each presentation will be about 15 minutes or so, may go a little bit over that. So again, we're going to hope that we have an opportunity at the end of each presentation for a brief Q&A, maybe just 1 or 2 questions, but we'll be looking forward to that. At the top of the hour, we'll take a 5-minute break, just to pause so that people can step away from their screen if they need to do that, get a glass of water, whatever you need to do there. Sometimes that is helpful just to get away from the screen for a minute. The last thing I want to mention before turning this over to Tom is just as a general overview, the reason that we're doing this, the objective for today's session is to really engage stakeholders in the sagebrush conservation strategy development process so that hopefully we'll develop some ownership in the outcomes, and also to familiarize all of you with the current science and the key conservation challenges. So that's our overview for what we are up to today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom for a more detailed and content-specific overview. Tom?
Thank you, Susan. First, I need to acknowledge you and Enviro Issues for the tremendous job you guys have done. The planning team tried your patience, I know, quite a bit with our just-in-time delivery model. So thank you for that. And I also need to thank Karen Prentice and Vicki Heron from the BLM, who obtained the support to make your participation possible, in addition to funding the USGS publication costs for the strategy. So really appreciate that. And I mentioned the planning team. I need to acknowledge them as well. It's been a labor of love for these folks who have done it on top of their normal jobs. Pat Dybert from the Fish and Wildlife Service, Susan Haiman, you from Enviro Issues, Alan Janae from NDOW, Don Kemner from Idaho Department of Fish and Game, Karen Prentice from BLM, Leslie Schreiber from Wyoming Game and Fish Department, Stan Stiver from WAFWA, and Catherine Whiteman from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. So you can see we had a fairly diverse agency representation on our planning team, and thank you to them. I did want to spend a few minutes talking about putting this into context, exactly how this webinar today and tomorrow and our breakout groups next week fit into the larger picture. As many of the people on the call know, because they were one of the 120 or so professionals that contributed to it, we've been for several years now working on a contextual analysis of the issues, the conservation challenges facing the sagebrush biome. That document has gone to USGS for publication. And while we are not able to share it because of their rules, confidentiality rules, it is the basis for the presentations that you're going to hear today, and that will guide us as we move into the breakouts. So part B of the strategy is currently under development, and because all conservation is local, part B really zooms in on things at local scales, including an eco-regional assessment of human and wildlife dependencies on sagebrush at eco-regional scales. We'll talk about them at biome scales today. It includes a description of sagebrush plant communities at the alliance level that Dave Tart and Mary Manning worked on. It's going to include a chapter on increasing capacity and then specific strategies that can be used to retain or restore the functional resistance and resilience of sagebrush plant communities. So this last piece, the strategies, is really what this webinar today, the case studies tomorrow, and the breakouts next week fit in, is to populate those strategies. The purpose of today's webinar is to get everybody to the same level of understanding about the challenges on threats to the sagebrush biome. Tomorrow, we want to give you some examples of successful collaborative conservation approaches that, if scaled up and replicated or imitated, can move the needle. And then the real work will begin next week in those focused breakout groups. And we apologize for having to limit participation, but it was really necessary to get the kind of engagement that we want, where hopefully we'll identify, refine, and prioritize those strategies that can take us forward. And our challenge is not to just do incrementally better, as Tony alluded to, but we really truly need to confront and resolve issues that have plagued us for over 100 years. So the strategies will be published as part B of the strategy by USGS. So any of you who participate in a meaningful way moving forward at identifying and refining these things will be credited as authors. And it's also, as Tony mentioned, it's sanctioned by the WAFWA EOC, the Executive Oversight Committee on Sagebrush, which consists of key leaders from natural resource and wildlife agencies from across the West. So you can be assured that the product will be delivered to people who can implement those changes, and they will be given serious consideration. So I also want to explain, so today the part A of the strategy was pretty comprehensive. We had 19 chapters. We don't have time to cover 19 topic areas today. So we're zooming in on human and wildlife needs and some of the key threats. So some of the really important chapters are not going to be represented by presentations today. Communications, for instance, restoration, adaptive management and monitoring, climate change, etc. So apologize for that, but we do expect that strategies to address communication needs will be embedded in each of the threat assessments that we'll have breakout groups for. Communication on fire prevention, for instance. Climate change adaptation strategies for fire, climate change adaptation strategies for invasives. Since climate change is primarily a force multiplier for those threats, we're going to embed those discussions into the individual threats. Beyond that, there are some larger scale issues like prioritizing sagebrush landscapes beyond sage grouse, adaptive management and monitoring. Those things will pick up later, not exactly sure, probably another breakout group process, but we'll take up those larger landscape scale coordination issues down the road. So we'll get to them. That's not the purpose of the discussions today and tomorrow and next week. So with that, thank you all for your interest and participation. It's truly gratifying to see how many people were interested in this. We got a lot of work to do, so I'll turn it back to Susan and let her introduce our first speaker.